Okay, good morning.
Доброе утро.
So this panel is titled Beyond Modular, and we're looking at the blurred line between construction and manufacturing, which extends today beyond modular building technologies to 3D printing, robotics, smart building technologies, and more. In your programs, you have the bios of all of the presenters today, so in the interest of time, we're not going to individually introduce everyone, but please take a moment to review their information. So I'd like to start us off with a question for the group. In what places have there been significant progress with modular building, drone technologies, and 3D printing? And what are the factors you see which contributed to that success? Diana, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us here. I work for a drone company called PrecisionHawk, and so I'll be focusing on that aspect of the question. We've been seeing drone technology used at all stages of the building, construction, and maintenance process across the country since really August 2016, when the FAA put out the first rule allowing commercial operations with drone technology, and we've done some really cool things, including really disrupt the way that people are doing environmental impact assessments before building construction or reconstruction projects. We did a large project at the West LA Veteran Affairs Campus, which is one of the largest homeless veterans populations in the nation. And we were able to map out every single tree and the species and create a digital twin of the entire campus that would help with reconstruction, and also doing things like looking at energy efficiency across buildings and things like that.
How about you, Roger?
So there are a number of things that are contributing to sort of the take-up of modular construction. On the governmental side, there have been countries like Singapore, the UK, and frankly New York leaning in and trying to push modular technology for utilization in their needs, and hotel companies like Marriott and others mandating a modular design for rollouts of multiple hotels. So that is big on the pickup. And then of course, on the that's on the carrot side. On the stick side, we have decreasing highly skilled labor force and tons of construction need, incredible housing deficits, and so all of those things are pushing people to think about how to integrate into the construction process.
And Nikita?
Всем доброе утро.
Good morning, everybody.
Моя компания разрабатывает оборудование для 3D-печати.
My company is developing equipment and technology for 3D printing.
И мы работаем над большим спектром задач, включая разработку методологии для расчета этих зданий, которые будут отпечатаны.
We have a wide scope of tasks before our company, and one important area is developing methodology for making estimates and calculations.
Для зданий, которые будут отпечатаны.
For the buildings which will be printed out.
Я думаю, что основная задача для новых технологий — это сделать их понятными для инженеров, которые будут использовать их.
My feeling is that today the most important thing about new technology is to make them easy to understand for the engineers who will be working with the new technology.
Yeah.
Thank you all. How and when does your technology integrate into the design and construction workflows? Is there a critical point of involvement for success? Let's start with Nikita for this question.
Ваша технология вписывается в технологический процесс. Есть ли какой-то критический момент в этой области?
Я думаю, что на данный момент мы решили все критичные вопросы.
My feeling is that currently we resolved all critical issues in this area.
Но я бы сказал, что много задач, которые необходимо решить, и они должны быть со стороны муниципалитетов и officials'ов, чтобы сделать эту технологию, ускорить процесс получения building permit.
I believe that as of now we resolved all the critical issues, and now we should bring our attention to how we may work with the government, with municipalities, so that they would be more open to that.
Thank you.
Спасибо.
Roger?
So from our perspective, if you're considering utilizing manufactured volumetric modular construction like we do or other sort of sub-assemblies, that really needs to be thought about at schematic design at the latest, preferably before. We add parameters that create a value proposition as long as you integrate them early. If you don't, modularizing a building is quite complicated.
From our perspective, the earlier that you can start to leverage drone technology in the process, even as early as site selection, environmental impact analysis, and things like that, the better off you are, because drones are really just a tool for acquiring data sets, and how you combine that data and use it with other data sets that you have is really where the value lies. So we've been able to work with large contractors and developers to actually help reduce the need for rework on job sites, which can be very costly and expensive in not just money, but also time to finish the project. And we've been able to see great results by using drones at the very early stage to make sure things are on track, that there are no issues with the foundation, that we don't need to go backwards and redo some of the work that we've already done.
So it sounds like being on board is beneficial in almost all cases.
Yeah.
So emerging technologies and processes are sometimes associated with higher risk. Are there perceived risks around your technology? And if so, what are they and how do you address them? Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Drones unfortunately tend to be in the news for bad reasons and scary reasons, not for all the good work that they've been doing in public safety, construction, agriculture, and you name it, every industry they've been touching. But people are always worried about the safety risks and the privacy risks. So whenever you see drones in the news, it's usually because they were interfering with firefighters, or there was a potential sighting, of a drone near an airport, or somebody's privacy, being invaded by a drone. Now, some of those reports have turned out to be false, actually. So. But needless to say, there are, certain safety risks associated and privacy risks with this new emerging technology. And I think the FAA has done a great job of creating uniform law across the country to allow that technology to really take off and achieve its potential. Unfortunately, some cities and states have tried to regulate drone technology in ways that are actually legally preempted by the federal regulations, but nevertheless, they're still trying to enforce these laws, which are not really valid. New York City is the best example of that. There's an old 70-year-old statute, an aviation statute, that restricts takeoff and landing anywhere in the city because drones are considered legally aircraft. They're caught up in that law. And so, unfortunately, if you're not taking off from a designated place for aircraft, like the airports, then that drone operation is illegal in the city. So that's an area where our company is working with other stakeholders and would love to have, other representatives that are here in this room, help us champion, bringing drone technology to New York City, because it's tremendously beneficial and has been used safely and successfully for construction projects across major metropolitan centers, including Chicago, LA, London, and global centers around the world. So there's no reason New York City needs to be left behind.
So the risks are actually very few, other than it requires a process change, and that's complicated for most anybody, and especially I think in our industry. It is process that creates the efficiencies, and using manufacturing as part of that process allows you to do something that is unique to a manufacturing environment, which is that the theory of constraints can be applied over and over again, and it's organized in that fashion. So in order to change that process, everybody's role changes just a little bit. Everybody's involved, everybody has a role, but it's different. And that's complicated for anybody in any place, and in our industry, it's, I think, a little bit more complicated. But that's changing. But from a real risk perspective, at the end of the day, still same codes, probably tighter tolerances because we're doing it in an ergonomic environment. The cities, for the most part, in most places, it's a little bit less complicated than sort of standard permitting process, but at least the same. So the real risks are the willingness to try something different, and then once that's done, it's actually pretty easy.
Я абсолютно согласен с Дженнифер и Роджером, что люди воспринимают новые технологии с опаской в первое время.
I totally agree with Jennifer and Roger that people perceive new technology with a degree of fear.
Но также я убежден, что новые технологии более гибкие.
I'm convinced that the new technology that we have in our hands it's much more flexible.
Для того, чтобы сделать их более надежными.
And it is instrumental in making our product more reliable.
Например, к нам обращалось много людей с просьбой отпечатать здания в Калифорнии, когда там были пожары.
For instance, there were many people and parties who addressed us with the request to print out buildings in California right after the major fires.
И новые технологии позволяют использовать новые материалы. Например, мы можем использовать для печати геополимер, который может выдерживать 1000 градусов, и это плюс новых технологий.
Also, new technology is quite promising in terms of using new materials. And there is a material which we called geopolymer, which can stand temperatures up to 1000 degrees.
Nikita mentioned disaster resilience just now, and I'd like to flip that back around to Roger and Diana. How do the things that you're working on potentially have benefits around disaster resilience and recovery as well?
So our company has done a lot of work in the Carolinas and Florida after Hurricanes Florence and Michael over the last couple of years. We are working with some large energy utility companies to actually go out and assess damage to utility poles, down power lines. We also helped map evacuation routes and get disaster declaration funds released from the federal government to the states based on the drone data that we captured. And we also worked with insurance companies to help expedite the claims processing to get people back into their homes and into their businesses much faster. Because sometimes when the roads would be washed out, it would take weeks before someone could go, an adjuster could go on foot to actually access the area. But by being able to access the airspace with drone technology, we would be able to collect that data and get it over to the insurance companies within a day or so. So we've really started to see tremendous benefits of drone technology used, and we actually we led the charge to change congressional language in the FAA Reauthorization Act in the fall to allow for civil companies to actually access airspace during emergencies under a special process that would only take a matter of hours as opposed to 60 or 90 days when TFRs go up, temporary flight restrictions. And so we argued that civil companies like construction companies, builders, insurance companies, energy companies, and drone companies are doing critical work to help the public benefit. So even though we're not engaged in public activities, the work we're doing in those instances serves the public. And so we were able to expand that process so that we could go out and do reconstruction and assessments and things like that legally.
So modular disaster sort of housing has been around for a long time, and has been got those. But we recently have been talking to a number of federal agencies about deployable buildings, something that could handle larger volumes of people and be deployed and then disassembled and redeployed as needed. And so there's a lot of work going on around that, both sort of on the scientific, on the design and engineering side, and also sort of on the modular process side. So there's a bunch of products, as you say, that would allow that to happen. Sort of just imagine a hotel going down to an emergency area on a temporary foundation, maybe printed, and then it's deployed until it's no longer needed, and then it could be redeployed somewhere else.
Well, you segued nicely to my next question. How might modular building, drone capture, and 3D printing work together on the same project? Would they complement or interfere with each other?
I think they would all complement each other. Some of the work that we've done with energy companies, we're looking at utility poles, and we're able to zero in and see, even if one screw is starting to become loose, or like a bracket is shifting because the pole is in Alaska and there's a lot of ice there. So even down to minute sort of changes. And then we're giving that data back to a command center to send out specialists with particular tools to go fix what's happening in the field. So that's a perfect application in the future to mix 3D printing for special parts, and use drones to collect the data of what's actually needed, do the 3D printing, and then use drones to actually deliver those parts back out into the field.
So from my perspective, we're sort of almost already there. We integrate technology and do sort of joint venture technology creation with a bunch of companies. We're working with a technology utilizing drones for the metrology or the model-based surveying that we do on site. And it's how we know that the product that we build in the factory, which is accurate, is also ready to go into a place that is accurate. So that's already happening today, and it will only increase sort of the value of the interaction of the process. And from the interesting thing, this is called Beyond Modular, and my view is that modular is one tool that you can use to solve problems in a technological process. And obviously 3D printing has a future in tandem and separate based on the needed solution. So I could see a printed foundation in a modular building, or I could say a modular building with columns that are printed in order to support it to create more sort of negative space in a building. All of those things are happening, and beyond whatever. There's lots of opportunities right now.
Я думаю, что технология 3D-печати пока что еще молодая, и пока рано говорить о каких-то комбинациях.
I believe that as of today, the 3D printing technology is still quite young, and perhaps it's premature to talk about combinations.
Да, но, конечно же, я абсолютно согласен, что целевая мощность этой технологии и ее емкость, она позволит использовать одновременно разные виды материалов и других.
But I believe that taking into consideration the capacity of this new industry, we can do a lot of things because we are open to using new materials.
Также на примере у нас есть один заказчик в Арабских Эмиратах, и после того, как мы начали печатать им дом, они попросили также отпечатать у нас мебель, поэтому это можно делать одновременно.
To exemplify, I can share with you that right now we are working with a client in the Arab Emirates, and they ordered us to print a house. And when they saw how we do it, they expanded their order, and they asked us to also print them furniture.
So how are your technologies helping to increase the sustainability of construction processes? It's an easy one for you, Roger.
Yeah, it's an easy one for me. I mean, we have almost no waste. Our process is already sustainable, but the interesting thing about what we do and the way that we organize creating the built environment is that you can integrate all sustainability that you'd like. It can be, I mean, we're going to be building some passive housing, imminently. It's pretty easy to add as much sort of sustainability as you would like, and it's pretty easy in our process.
Nikita?
Да, естественно, это, я бы сказал, основной бенефит технологии печати.
I should say that sustainability is one of the main benefits of the 3D printing.
На примере мы 100% избавляемся от мусора.
We are 100% free of wastes.
Потому что мы используем материал для печати, который делает именно то, что мы запрограммировали.
Because while printing, we're using the material, and in the end, we are getting exactly what was planned and designed.
И если у нас остаются остатки, мы просто переносим их на следующий проект.
And if we have any leftover material, we can simply transfer it to the next project.
Также я хотел бы сказать, что технология 3D-печати позволяет печатать здания, которые могут быть абсолютно recyclable.
Also, 3D printing technology gives you an opportunity to print buildings which could be totally recyclable.
So now I'm asking you to break out your crystal ball. The technologies and processes you're involved in are already seen as cutting edge, but what's next? Can you provide a sneak peek as to where you see your technologies and processes going in the next 5, 10, or even 20 years?
So I think with drone technology, it used to be about, capturing, conditions as is and trying to drive actionable intelligence and business decisions based out of that. But we're starting to move towards layering that data with other data sets and being more predictive, like looking at when, under what conditions in the future a structure might fail, and monitoring things like weather patterns and changes. Like, for example, a lot of the utility poles in the United States were built, 30, 40 years ago. Back then, we didn't have the wind speeds that we have today, and so a lot of them are starting to fail. So rather than looking at maintenance and recapitalization or reconstruction, decisions based on the intervals that you're given in a manual based on the conditions at the day, using drones and other sensor technology in real time to actually make those decisions based on the factors as they're changing. I think that's really the future of where drone technology is going.
And I think what's going to happen is a sort of an increase in the acknowledgement that the theory of constraints and the ability to automate things is going to grow in the industry, with modular as one solution of that. But the idea of solving a problem to increase productivity, to decrease uncertainty, is going to be something that we are all going to be utilizing. And obviously a great environment for that is modular, but there's many others. And I think the quicker we concentrate on that, the quicker we're going to get the productivity that we need to solve housing crises and all of the other constraints that we currently have.
Я думаю, что в 3D-печати следующий шаг — это печать перекрытий и горизонтальной конструкции без поддержки.
I think that the next step in 3D printing would be printing partitions and ceilings and parts which do not need any support.
И следующий шаг — это печать небоскребов.
And the next big step is printing skyscrapers.
Yeah, and Еще next step.
And one step further,
Мы должны разработать методологии расчета для отпечатанной конструкции.
what we need to do is to develop methodology for making estimation and calculation for all structures.
Тогда мы можем строительство сделать абсолютно эффективным.
Once we are successful in that area, we can assure that our construction will be perfectly successful.
Например, мы можем сделать форму здания таким образом, чтобы оно и сделать такую форму, чтобы оно было очень устойчиво к ветру, например.
For instance, we can implement such shape of a building that it would be perfectly resistant to wind load.
И эта гибкость позволяет делать много оптимизаций в плане материала и других вещей.
This would offer fantastic flexibility, and given that flexibility, we can use a great variety of materials.
So my final question for you all today. What are some takeaways for our audience of ways they can potentially advance technologies and processes like modular construction, 3D printing, and drones, and how can we advance these technologies in New York in particular?
Well, I'll start. We've already talked about a lot of the beneficial uses of drone technology, and they're really limitless potential, especially in this industry, among all of them. And, I would encourage you to get your policy people engaged, in what's going on with the New York regulation. We're certainly going to be very active with our partners over the next year to try to make changes to that law to allow drone technology in the city.
And I would encourage you, if you have a built environment opportunity that you want to create, look at a modular solution, or at least accept the concept that you could take some additional parameters and see if you could create efficiencies in that process. And no matter what, you're going to come out with a better solution. So give it a try. I know it's scary, but it does yield some incredible efficiencies and thought processes in how you create the built environment in an effective way.
Я думаю, что можно предложить то, что можно использовать уже сейчас, и мы можем это сделать.
Well, we have things which can be implemented today, and we should be offering that today.
Я знаю, что в Нью-Йорке очень много небоскребов.
Well, it's obviously there are so many skyscrapers in New York.
И мы можем имплементировать нашу технологию, не меняя саму основу здания.
And we can implement our technology without changing the foundation or the base of the building.
Сейчас на данный момент все небоскребы строят из железобетонного каркаса.
So right now, all skyscrapers are based on the reinforced concrete structure.
И технология 3D-печати может использоваться для печати всех перегородок.
And today you can use 3D printing to manufacture absolutely every partition.
На примере ездит маленький робот по этажу и запечатывает все перегородки.
To example, can you imagine a situation when a medium-sized machine or robot is traveling on the floor and closes all partitions, builds them?
Right. Well, thank you all. And I encourage all of you to learn more about these technologies as well. Do some research on the internet, talk to our panelists today at our breaks, and look at what could be as part of the future of building in New York. So thank you.